All right, guys, it's the holiday season, and I know a lot of you are asking a lot of dietary questions about the holidays. One of the questions I get a lot as a coach from my clients is, how do I track macros over the holidays? Should I track macros over the holidays? How do I deal with the holidays? And pretty much all of our clients are giving us those questions right now.
I think alcohol is another one for the holidays.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Too, so we can talk about that today.
Yeah, so some of the strategies that I like to use is first assessing what the person's goals are. So if you're somebody who you're going to do a show in, say, February or March, and that's only 6-8 weeks after Christmas is over, you're going to have to be more restrictive with what you're doing. But if you're somebody who's just, you always got to keep in mind like what's important to you. So if you say, you know what, I don't want to count, I don't have to worry about this kind of stuff. I mean, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But we want to have some strategies so that you're not gaining 10, 20 pounds and going crazy. Is that kind of where you start with your clients? Like, where do you start with this conversation?
Yeah, I think having time frames to competitions, or if they've got set dates in mind where they need to be have a certain physique at a certain time, working backwards from that. And is it really important if you slip up a little bit? And then we kind of go from there. So,
yeah, if you got a show in 6 or 8 weeks, and you say, well, I want to go out and I want to eat dinner with my family and I want to enjoy it. Well, that's fine, but understand that the further away you get from foods you can control, even if you go out to like a chain restaurant, or if you got foods that you can log into MyFitnessPal or whatever tracker you're using, the problem is that the further you get away from what you can control, it may say something's a certain amount of something or another, but as you know as a dietitian, those are pretty inaccurate.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess with something like MyFitnessPal, people can manually enter in the information into them. So
I've seen lasagna in there with like 5 grams of carbs. I'm like, wow, really? Can I have some of that lasagna?
I think I always remind my clients, and I have to remind myself this sometimes, is it is a holiday, and to remember that, and it's a time that you're spending with your family. You don't want to alienate your family when you're going on a holiday, because especially if it's something like Thanksgiving or Christmas and they've prepared a really nice meal, it is nice to be able to sit down and actually enjoy the time and the company and, celebrate. So I think it's important to make sure you go in with some kind of game plan, right?
Yeah, I think that one of the big mistakes people make is that, one, if they're making plans to compete early in the year, I don't really like it. I usually try to discourage people from doing that, unless you're just going to be completely regimented and say, you know what, I'm bringing my own food everywhere, and people are just going to have to understand, okay. But people make the mistake of, I'm not going to really change what I do. I'll be okay. I'll just kind of wing it and go into there, and they don't have
that
a plan.
sounds like a danger zone kind of call. If you just think that you can go in and expect to just breeze through the temptations, especially if you are close. So what are some of your strategies? Let's say you are planning on competing in the early year. Where would you start? Let's think about preparation.
Well, the first thing I would start with, if I had that sort of thing, is the first thing I would do is talk to my family and say, okay, I'm not going to be like eating the same things everybody else is going to be eating, and here's why. I can, like, if they're fixing a turkey, okay, I can take the white meat, I can have that. They're fixing some mashed potatoes, whatever, okay, I can do a certain amount of that. They're doing a vegetable dish, I can do a certain amount of that. But I'm probably not going to have much pie, if any, just because that's going to eat through my macros really fast.
Yeah, or desserts in general.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you tend to be somebody who gets triggered, #triggered from desserts, that might be something you want to avoid, or just for the pure caloric density of it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned sticking to like the vegetables, foods that you're familiar with, but if you want to be able to sit down and enjoy a larger meal, stick to your habits. Eat the foods that are higher in fiber. So have a larger, more voluminous food. So serve yourself a good sized portion of vegetables. At least then you're still starting to feel full. And not giving into the temptation of those calorically dense foods.
Yeah, and maybe even bring your own dish, right? Like bring your own vegetable dish. Like you could make for example, a broccoli casserole, and you could make some small adjustments to it to make it much lower calorie. And if you're sticking to that, and you're keeping butter off of your potatoes, and you're choosing white meat instead of dark meat, I mean, you could save yourself 20 or 30 grams of fat. Right there, right on the front end.
Sauces on the side, kind of eliminating all those calorically dense things.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things to do is, macro distribution throughout the day. So, like, obviously we like to time things around our training, have more carbs around our training, that sort of thing. But if you know that later, like if you're training earlier in the day and you know later in the day you're going to be having a big meal with your family, well, then probably eat a little bit less food that you would pre and post training. Save some more for later in the day. Or if you're not training at all that day, that's fine. Go 0 carbs, 0 fat, all protein until that dinner.
I think strategizing your macros. So have a look at what your actual targets are. I mean, for a lot of us, we might have high days, we might have low days. So obviously, if you have a high day scheduled, schedule it on the holiday day, that'd be the first thing I would do. But you can start to look at the surrounding days as well. If you know that there's going to be a whole lot of temptation, and especially alcohol, where it's coming into the celebration, Christmas time, you can take maybe 10 grams of carbohydrate from the previous day and have a lower day the next day. Take 10 grams and then you've straight away got an extra 20 grams. That's an extra drink. Yeah. That is an extra slice of bread with your dinner. So you can start to kind of look at your macros and be sparing on those surrounding days.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one option. You can start to borrow macros from other days. Some people get a little bit too extreme with this. They go, well, I'm not going to eat for 3 days.
There's the extremes of this. You want to be mindful. You can't expect that you would...
Right, because that's not healthy either.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, if you want to borrow a certain amount, like I think it's probably okay to go 10, 20% borrowing from other days. So you can go 20% from the day before, 20% from the day after, and now you got 40% extra carbohydrate and fat to eat on that day you want to eat it.
A great example of what not to do would be if you were, for females, this is usually much more difficult, I guess, because our targets are usually a little lower than males, but if your carbohydrate requirements are already set fairly sparingly, if you're coming into a competition perhaps in the early new year, or you're just trying to maintain your weight, and they're 120 grams, you would not want to sacrifice 50 grams of your carbohydrates or 50% of your carbs from the previous day, because you're setting up an unrealistic expectation of hitting those numbers, and then that can tend to have that roll-on effect into the preceding days. I mean, I admittedly have done this myself.
I was going to say something, but I didn't.
It's not something you want to get into a habit of. Let's put it that way. If it's a once-off thing, then I think that it's fine. But it's when you start to see a continual behavior that would be a problem.
And you tend to be somewhat of, okay, well, I know I stuffed this up, but if I eat 0 carbohydrate for the next 18 days, I can make it fit.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, that's getting to be too extreme, and a little bit from the day before, a little bit from the day after, I think is okay.
Yep.
I think also, you could do a little bit more activity, a little more cardio, a little more training if you want. Although most people don't want to spend their time doing that when it's the holidays.
Yeah.
So that's, how much do you want to use that? It's up to you. But I think the question coming down to, okay, now do I want to actually track macros or not? I think obviously if you've got a competition coming up, you're going to have to track. But if you don't have a competition coming up, I would say probably reasonable just to guesstimate. Don't take a food scale to Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner. I mean, if you really want to, that's fine, but you don't have to. If you've been tracking macros for a while, you probably get a good idea of what's in most things.
I did this on this Thanksgiving. I didn't track anything, but I've been tracking for a long time, so I can kind of guess the weights and have a really good idea of what's in foods, thankfully. But for people that are new, how do you feel about them then potentially weighing things?
I think for people that are new to macros, I think it's going to be difficult. I would say, just be reasonable with your intake, right? So don't eat until you feel like you're bursting at the seams. You're going to have a good time without gorging yourself, You can enjoy Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it is without feeling like your stomach is actually going to rupture. So maybe eat till you feel physically full and then say, okay, I'm done, right, after that. Don't just eat for the sake of eating so you can eat more. Because at the end of the day, you're going to feel worse. You're going to feel worse the next day, and then you're going to feel worse because you got to take it off. So why not just eat a reasonable amount, enjoy what you like.
Yep.
Maybe you add a little bit of weight, but it's going to come off pretty quickly. So in that way, you're like I said, I've used this before, the kind of eat till I feel physically full strategy, and then I kind of shut it down after that. I think that's a reasonable strategy for people who aren't used to tracking. I also think for people who their competition's far off. Physique and gym isn't their main thing. They just kind of do it as a side hobby, but they usually track their intake because they're trying to be mindful of things. I think if you just don't want to track, that's fine, you know. But just with the understanding that if you go crazy, there's going to be some consequences. Yeah, I mean, like neither of us are ever going to yell and scream at clients and get mad at them. You know, like it's all about like as long as you have a mindful conversation. I think one of the main things I talk about with eating is being mindful. And so having that inner conversation of, okay, I know I might gain some body fat, but I want to eat this. And I'm okay with that. Rather than what I typically see is people, they kind of make a prayer to the macro God and they go, I'm going to eat whatever the hell I want and I just really hope I don't gain weight.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just not a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The other thing I was going to say, we were talking about alcohol. What are your recommendations for alcohol around this time? And perhaps we can give the audience or listeners a bit of an idea about how to track alcohol.
Yeah. So alcohol can be tough to fit because it's pretty calorically dense. Like even if you're drinking a very low, like take straight vodka, which basically has no carbohydrate in it, right? You still have 7 calories per gram of alcohol, which, you know, that's almost the same as fat. Yeah. Right? That's close to fat.
Between carbohydrate, protein, and fat.
Right. So, you know, how you make that fit. Now, if you're a guy like me where I'm eating, you know, over 3,000 calories a day, like I can lower my food intake a little bit. I can make alcohol fit. That's not a big deal for me. But for somebody like you whose carbohydrate intake's around, you know, 120 grams to 150 grams of carbohydrate a day, and your fat's anywhere from 50 to 60, like that's going to be tougher for you.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much going to look at, okay, dessert or alcohol, not both if you're going to hit your targets.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, I think this year I strategized a little bit differently. Usually I will intermittently fast. That's kind of a new behavior for me, but that actually enabled me to have a little bit more of both for our bigger Thanksgiving meal. So yeah, I did nothing during the morning, which is fine. We had a late start, so that freed up what would usually be my breakfast. So we were looking at around maybe 300 calorie breakfast. So 300 calories for alcohol is quite a bit, I must say. That's like maybe 4 or 5 glasses of wine. So, yeah.
I mean, you have a video on how to track alcohol.
Yeah,
we'll link it down here and we'll put it in the annotations. But essentially, like what we always tell people is take the calories that are in whatever drink you're having, whether it's 100, 150, 200 calories, and you can find most of these online, and either divide it by 4 or divide it by 9.
Oh, 9, my apologies.
Yeah, so unless you're going to make a separate category to track alcohol. Because alcohol, you can kind of either take it from your carb or fat allotment.
I usually do a little bit of both.
So do I.
Because my macros aren't super high, I will take some from fats and some from carbs.
Yeah, exactly. So you can take it from fats or carbs or both from either allotment because alcohol tends to have a little bit of characteristics of both. Metabolically, it kind of acts like a carbohydrate because it suppresses lipolysis and your body kind of has to get rid of that before it can really do anything else. But in terms of the actual structure of it, it comes into the Krebs cycle at acetyl-CoA, so it's kind of more like a fat in that instance because it's acetaldehyde. But yeah, if you want to use it from both, I think that's fine. That's what I usually do too. So like my beer I drink, Yuengling Light, shout out to Yuengling, has 99 calories for one beer. So usually what I track it as is 6 grams of fat and 15 grams of carbohydrate. And that gets me right about 100 calories. So again, whatever you want to do with that is fine, but just keep in mind that alcohol does have calories even if there's no carbs in it. And if you're somebody who's lower on macros, it's going to be harder to fit that in. And alcohol isn't really filling. So if you drink a lot of alcohol, you may still be hungry. In fact, some people get hungrier when they're drunk or tipsy. And now that can have certain consequences as well because your inhibition is lowered and you're more likely to overeat. So I would say, know yourself, right? Like I'm somebody who can stay, even if I'm pretty tipsy, I usually won't overeat just because it's not really my habit. But some other people, they tend to be, if they get a little tipsy and they're in that environment where everybody's eating food. They kind of go into
the stuff it mode.
They kind of go into fuck it mode, we call it. So if you know that about yourself, then maybe try to moderate your alcohol intake a little bit more, or put yourself in a situation where when the alcohol comes out, there's no food available.
Yeah.
So, but I think the main thing is, should you track macros during the holiday season? I would encourage anybody to eat mindfully in any situation. Does that mean you have to track macros? I think it depends on your goals. I'm usually, if I'm not in contest prep, I'm going to be kind of loosely tracking. So I'm going to be just guesstimating, writing it down in my notes of my phone, and then going from there and trying to get as close as I reasonably can.
Yep.
But, what you guys tend to pick is really up to you. But just always go in with a plan, have some kind of strategy, and always eat mindfully. And I think those are going to get you further than anything else.
Assume the worst. Think that you'll be mentally tough and capable of being having self-control, but expect the worst. So I think then you have a little bit of leeway if you do stuff up.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I always tell people, overestimate by 10%.
Yeah.
And then at least you've given yourself some room.
Yeah.
Hey guys, if you like this video, click like, share it, subscribe to our channel. She's Holly Baxter. I'm Layne Norton. Also, check out her recipe ebook. She has a new recipe ebook that's awesome.
Yep.
Macro-friendly recipes.
Yeah,
And you
delicious.
can cook one of them and take them to your holiday party.
Yeah, good idea.
Exactly. So you can also inquire to us for coaching by visiting our websites, biolayne.com and hpnutrition.com.au. And we'll catch you next time, guys.